What's up, y'all? A brand new, highly anticipated game has just come out from Bethesda, Starfield, and thanks to the team over there at Bethesda, we were actually given a little bit of an early access sneak peek into the game, and I've been able to dip quite a bit of hours into the game to kind of give you guys my full review into it. This is my first time doing something like this, but I will tell you this, I have fallen in love with the game, and I'm going to give it my honest opinion and my thoughts behind it, and we're going to do some quick snippets about things I've kind of liked about the game, what I didn't like, and kind of just the overall game mechanics as a whole. Don't worry, there's going to be no spoilers. I'm not going to show you endgame. I'm never going to talk about certain things that come out closer towards the end of the game. I'll let you guys kind of explore and figure that out for yourselves. But let's start out with the opening scene of Starfield. The Starfield opens up with you being sort of part of this excavation crew already in space, and you're kind of just there going through the process, and you come across your very first artifact. So what Starfield does very good at the beginning of this is kind of getting you through the process of the way the game's going to work. Obviously, if you played any of Bethesda games in the past, such as Skyrim, Fallout, there's gonna be some similar mechanics, but there's gonna be a lot of new ones too, and they kind of go in depth, and they actually do a pretty good job about teaching you how to do things. But as you play through the game, you start to learn there's a lot of ways to do those things differently than what they taught you, but it's a great foundation and you can kind of build upon it. One of them, for example, is when you're using the cutter, which is kind of the main thing you use to get your materials, essentially everything throughout the game. If you actually aim in and charge up your cutter or laser, you can actually mine things a lot quicker as opposed to not doing that and sitting there for a hot minute trying to mine away at your materials and resources. One little quick tip right there for y'all. But they do a really good job about showing you how to kind of do the mining process to go ahead and get your resources and materials, and it throws you straight into like a gunfight with some base pirates already coming by and trying to chase down and take this artifact from you, because obviously it's a pretty key piece to the universe, right? So my honest opinion about the fighting here is the fighting felt really like rough and janky, didn't feel really fluid. Obviously Bethesda games aren't known for being top tier shooters, and that's perfectly fine. But one thing I am very happy about while playing the game, and it really changed my opinions from the beginning, is even though the shooting felt really weird and didn't feel great and it was clunky, as you build into your spec tree, you can actually see that there's a way to fix that, right? You can build into being a sort of, you know, explorer that uses weapons quite a bit, and your stability gets better, your range gets better, your aim is more fluid. Everything like that changes as you progress through the game, and if you want to build into that aspect, right? And it makes it so much better. No, it's not going to feel like an FPS, it's not going to feel like a shooter, but it's at least going to feel fluid, and it's going to feel kind of immersive. You're going to actually feel like where you're aiming, what you're shooting is actually working, as opposed to being in this weird space to where you're fighting and your bullets are just nowhere to be seen. So just build into it and you'll see that change quickly. When I initially saw it, I was worried. I was like, oh no, I really hope this isn't how the shooting is going to be throughout the entirety of the game. But luckily I figured it out and I was able to build into it, and now it feels fantastic. And now whenever there's a stealth or fight portion of the game, I fight 100% because it actually feels better after figuring out that process. After your initial encounter with the space pirates, you're actually thrown into your very first spaceship fight. I don't know what it's called. I'm sure there's a much better word for it, but you're in space, you're in your ship, and you're fighting other ships, specifically the pirate ships who you just ended up fighting on that planet. You're now fighting them in space, and you're actually having your first in-space battle. So I was pretty lost. I'm not used to this type of thing, so I was a little worried on the mechanics, you being able to switch your essentially your energy levels for your shield, your weapons, things like that, to kind of maneuver and change the way the battle goes for you. But like they did with the core basic mechanics for the excavation and mining, they actually walk you through on how to do the space fight pretty well. Now it's a little rough. I was a little rough with that at the beginning, but as I progressed further throughout Starfield, I actually figured out how to do it a lot more and a lot more efficiently regarding, you know, the type of ship I have, the building of the ship, and things like that. It allowed me to figure out how to actually fight a lot better, and everything gets better towards that aspect. So don't let this beginning fight kind of be like, oh no, not gonna be able to do this, it's gonna be tough. Because as you progress through the story, you can see how things get so much easier. Now, going from the space battles into your ship itself, there is a ton of modifications you can do for the ship. You can change every aspect of the ship, every color of the ship, build into your ship. You can upgrade your ship from your shields to your grav drive to your weapons that you use to the cargo shields. Every single aspect of your ship is pretty much customizable at its core. Now, it might be overwhelming, but don't worry. Once you get through it and you see like how it works and you progress through the story, once again, it gets super fluid. It becomes to a point to where you can build this ship with your eyes closed. Now, don't worry, if you don't really care about building your ship, there is a lot of aspects in the game where you can earn enough credits and actually just purchase different ships and compare them and just see the different power levels, the shield drives, things like that, and just buy different ships or even potentially commandeer some ships. So there's a lot of different ways to go ahead and get those. You don't need to worry if you don't want to build them now. If you're really meticulous and you want to build it a certain way, build it into a certain aspect, you can definitely do that in Starfield. And this is probably one of my favorite things about Starfield is how in-depth it actually goes into, and it also gives me the choice to go ahead and build that ship. But it also, if I don't want to build a ship and I kind of just want to buy a ship or even go find and potentially commandeer a ship that fits the needs I need to potentially go get resources, go fight space pirates or things like that, I'm given that choice. And I think that's a big win for Starfield, and it's super exciting. Now, going from the shipbuilding, we've all heard about it on social media, TikTok, things like that. People being upset about the boundaries in terms of space traveling, because we were kind of shown before Starfield was coming out, there was an endless travel and an endless thousands of planets we can go to and things like that. To be honest, that was kind of hard for me to believe, because that's a very hard thing to create in a game, especially in a game that's only about 120 gigs. So I was already not super optimistic about that, but playing the game, I kind of like the route they went into it. Now, there is a lot of traveling and you can't just seamlessly fly from planet to planet to planet without loading times or loading screens. And obviously you can't go to gas giants and you can't land on the sun. People on social media don't understand that. Hopefully those of you watching that understand it. No, you can't land on the sun. It makes sense. But there's a lot of traveling. The traveling, the way it works, you can build your ship capacity in terms of how far it can go. No, you don't need to worry about refueling your ship, which is a fantastic thing. I was really worried. Let's talk about fuel consumption, but that just means how far you can jump each time. So you can get to where you need to go just by doing multiple jumps. Yes, you need to jump. Yes, there's different load times. When you go into a planet, you have to load into the landing zone. So there's a lot of loading, but the loading is fairly quick. Now, let me tell you, disclaimer, I am on PC on a 4090. So load times are pretty quick for me. There's nothing super crazy. It maybe took anywhere from 1 to 10 seconds at the most for me to jump and load into these different areas. It might be annoying for some. I feel it's kind of the price you pay for such a large, beautiful game like this. We can talk about graphics all day, things like that. I think the graphics are fantastic. I think it looks beautiful. I think it runs beautifully. The load times are a bit much when you're traveling, but it doesn't really stop me from wanting to play the game, and I still really enjoy it. I will admit, when it comes into character design, the characters are very Bethesda. Bethesda's kind of a verb now, but the only issue I have with the characters is there's no real emotion tied to their facial expressions. Bethesda really tries in that aspect, but it's just not there just yet, and I hope they're able to perfect that over time. But that's one big gripe I definitely do have with the characters within the story, within the open world. There's just no real emotion behind them. So even though you're kind of in a situation where there needs to be emotion, you see the characters talking and it's just not there. But luckily for me, at least, it didn't kill the way the story progressed. It didn't kill the very intense moments for me. I just kind of knew coming into it, like, this is probably going to be one of the Bethesda things that happens, and it is. And it's, you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's definitely the one thing that would dock points off from Starfield in terms of the story and the characters itself, is that fortunately there's not a ton of emotion behind those mannequin-like characters. But that is really the only thing I have in terms of issues with the game as a whole. Other than that, everything felt fantastic. The story really drove itself. I don't want to tell you guys about the story. I want you to go enjoy it, but I played throughout the story. I practically finished it, and the story is pretty immense. It's intense. It feels really full. For this being the size of game it is, I was really surprised how much story they really jam-packed into it. There are a bunch of different storylines going from the Freestar Rangers, from the Constellation, from the UC Vanguard, from base pirates themselves. There's a lot of different stories you can go off and do, and you can do all of them. These are the different factions. You don't have to just choose one. If you want to do the storyline for each faction, you can, and that's what I did. I went through every single one, and every single one is worth doing because they offer different things. They offer different rewards, and rewards that will help your main storyline pretty amazingly. And doing each of those storylines will actually allow you to travel to so many different places within your star map and unlock a ton of new places and places with resources and ways to go and land on them, check them out. There's different like outposts there. There's different battles you can do. There's a ton of exploring to do, and I don't even think I've scratched the surface, being over 20 hours deep. Now, one thing we want to talk about that a lot of people know about is Outpost Building. When you go and you check out these planets, Outpost Building is actually really cool. The way you can crew into there, the way you can build around it. Essentially, you can create and mine these resources, not have to go out and excavate them yourself. But I warn you, building an outpost is extremely expensive in terms of resources and materials. I wasn't even able to do a ton in terms of showing y'all. One, I didn't really focus getting materials and excavating a ton because I wanted to play through the story in the game and kind kind of experience every aspect of it. And I did try to do some outpost building. I did not realize how expensive it was. So outpost building is essentially going to be a whole nother part of the game that you might not even get to until you've done everything else because of how long it's going to take. Am I a fan of how many resources and materials it takes? Not really. It's a lot of work, but I'm kind of glad it also does take that long. So I'm not just there building the perfect outpost and getting resources for free and essentially like making it one of the easier portions of the game. I'm glad it's really methodical. You really have to dive into it, but there's so many aspects of it, and you can make these outposts your own. You can assign crews to them. You can have defenses in case you're kind of in rough environments. It's a really awesome piece of the game that I'm still diving into myself, but I would say it's very, very time consuming and it's going to take a ton of resources. So definitely this is a portion of the game you're going to have to be patient with, but I do think it's one of the greater pieces of what Starfield has to offer in terms of exploration, excavation, and just creating things that are your own and really immersing you into that experience of you being the space explorer. But regardless of that, given the goods and the bads of Starfield, when you visit new cities for the first time, such as Aquila City or Neon, you really get to see how beautiful and impactful these areas are, even with the people themselves. They each feel completely different. I think Bethesda does a fantastic job about doing that. Every main city that you visit in Starfield feels like its own place, its own story. I think Starfield does one of the greatest jobs I've ever seen at doing this. And Bethesda did a fantastic job at really making this unique in its own way. So like I said at the beginning of the video, yes, I've dumped more than 20 hours into Starfield and I don't even feel like I've scratched the surface. There's so much more I need to do, so many more perks I need to unlock. I feel like I haven't even gone through 50% of the game and I cannot wait to dump 80 more hours into this game. I do think it's a game that can last for a very long time, and Bethesda already announced DLC coming out for Starfield. I'm excited to see for what's to come, and I do recommend this game. It may not be the perfect game, but it's definitely an amazing hit coming from Bethesda. I think Starfield can definitely be the game that surpasses Skyrim on what it did and create those amazing experiences for everybody. It's definitely a game worth checking out, and definitely a game that will be here for years to come, and I cannot wait to keep playing it for all those years. And hope you guys get the opportunity to check out the game. Hopefully you enjoyed my very first review of a game, and thank you so much to Starfield and Bethesda for giving me the opportunity to have early access to Starfield and get to explore every piece of the game, and I enjoyed absolutely every single moment. Hopefully you all get to check out the game, and if you're checking out the game today, let me know down in the comment section below. And if you get the opportunity to put in some hours into Starfield, come back to this video and let me know what you thought. I want you to be honest, regardless of how critical it is or not. I think Starfield is not perfect, but I do think it's one of the best launches we've had from a video game in a very long time, and I'm excited for you guys to enjoy it. Have a good one, y'all.